Hello, my name is Hayden an Ojibwe Native American, and this is Save a Walleye, Spearing Indian. The Walleye was to fight secure Native American fishery rights in Wisconsin and across Great Lakes. At this time in history, commercial fishery was on the rise, and historical Native American treaties weren't being honored. Bonjour. I'm an Ojibwe spearfisher who was in the Walleye War. The Walleye War had been taking place from the 1960s and longer, but it truly gained momentum in 1973, when two Ojibwe crossed the lake and fished illegally in Chief Lake. These men were arrested and convicted for poaching for out-of-season fishing in Wisconsin. In the courts, natives testified using treaties such as St. Peter's in 1837 and Love Point in 1842 that permitted the 6 bands of Chippewa to take as much as 100% of the total allowable catch on the region's lakes prior to sport fishing season. This enraged local non-natives. From treaty rights, a season for Native American spearfishers formed, with the first season taking place in 1985, with several rules in place to try and regulate spearfishing. The named lakes that were going to be speared had begun the DNR 48 hours prior to spearfishing. There were bag limits and a 20-inch size limit, and they were measured upon return, and each tribe member had to carry tribal identification. White sanctuary groups of local non-natives and non-native fishermen formed, with the first one being Equal Rights for Everyone, or ERFE in 1985. People believed that if we Indians were free to fish freely, that a complete depletion of natural resources would occur. On the last night of off-reservation spearing, about 100 protesters blocked us from the Big Twin Lake, and 5 gunshots were fired towards the lake. These groups had gathered on both ends. They'd hold racial signs and yell racial slurs at us. Save a walleye, spear an Indian! They would throw rocks at us and slash our tires. They'd carry around fake Indian heads on pikes and hung puppet Indians. Things would change for the 1986 season. There'd be a 9-day season that ended with hook and line season starting. We're allowed to fish till 1 a.m. on weekdays and 2 a.m. on weekends. 3 lakes were allowed to be speared per night, but no lake was allowed to be speared 2 nights consecutively. Unlike the 1985 season, the DNR did not release names of lakes that were going to be speared in an effort to prevent violent scenes on landings. These efforts still wouldn't work. We were still shot out on the water, blocked from landings, verbally abused, and even ran off the road. Another white sanctuary group formed in 1986, named Protect American Rights and Resources, or PAR. In an effort to pressure the government into addressing treaty rights, PAR stated they're going to boycott all native fishing and hunting licenses. The DNR was also criticized this year for not releasing names lakes that are going to be speared. Non-natives claimed it went against their First Amendment rights. Season rules would change again in 1987. Tribes were allowed to commence a 15-day season, and had to form the DNR 48 hours prior before it commenced. Permits were required this season with bag limits and a walleye 20-inch size limit being kept with 2 exceptions: a 20 to 24-inch walleye and a walleye of any size being permitted per night. There was a court ruling in 1987 that allowed us to mix new spearing practices with old, and so old spearfishing practices. This increased the feelings of hopelessness and powerlessness in non-natives who were angry over the new rulings, and by the fact that we're now allowed to sell our catch. On April 26, 1987, one of the most important events of the Walleye War would occur on Butternut Lake. Nights before, protesters gathered when Tom Mawson, the unofficial chief of the spearfishers, named the lake to be speared, but no spearfishers arrived. This enraged the protesters, and their anger grew more on April 26. It was the anniversary from Star Lake from a year ago, where it was argued that the Native American spearfishers took too many fish or not, and it was the night after a PAR rally in Mount Aqua. In the early evening, Indians, non-Indians, police, and wardens were on the landings. Larry Peterson, president of PAR, also appeared that night. There were some verbal taunts and rock bones, but we'd experienced this before. As it grew later, the protesters' numbers also grew, apparently recruited from local bars. By 11 o'clock, the crowd was estimated to range from 250 to 500 people, far bigger than the 11 law enforcement on the landing. The protesters started to grow angrier. The rocks they threw started to grow in size. The taunts escalated. Slurs were shouted. Save a walleye, spare an Indian, spear pregnant squaw, and save 2 walleye! We were backed out from the landings onto peninsula of land. Anybody who could get into their boats were stuck, and we weren't able to get out into the water. The cops told the protesters as we were gathering. The guys told them they were going to kill us. We picked up the rocks that were thrown at us. In all honesty, I figured that we would be killed. I just looked at the guys wondering which one I was going to take with me. Police officers from several counties would arrive with dogs, and by 2 a.m., the landings were cleared. The tribal council at Fernbo would act with anger the following day. The events at Butternut Lake were fanning the flames of racial hatred. It was racism, and its rawest, ugliest form. It was especially sad to see how many in the mob had brought their children to the scene, as if it were a sporting event. In this way, racial hatred is transmitted to the next generation. They once wore brown shirts and swastikas, or hid behind white sheets and burnt crosses. We will remember Butternut. The season will end 4 days later with 200 natives making a ceremonial return to the lake. Tom Olson said that we are strong as a nation. We are on this landing right here. They wanted to kill us. There's no way they're going to do it now. We're back. 150 police officers watch over the landings, only allowing people with tribal identification to enter the landings. Things will change in 1988 in regard to responsibilities. Police officers from several counties were on their ready to break up protests. A National Guard helicopter kept watch over the lakes. K-9 units were used on boat landings, and more. A group of treaty supporters would be formed this year, named Citizens for Treaty Rights. Non-Indian opposition groups would also adapt this year, with things like treaty beer. Attention, Zetlanders. When you order your summer beer inventory, please remember this. Treaty beer gives all its profits to fight the economic blackmail that is currently facing your industry. The new treaty beer is one of the best quality beers in the U.S. To all those Zetlanders who told us they will only stock treaty beer, God bless you. Things would change in 1989. There was a growing division on how to deal with things like protesters. People like Tom Olson argued that we should be peaceful and not retaliate against non-natives. There are others who disagreed. Gilbert Chapman, who was referred to as a militant spearfisher, said that non-natives weren't willing to fight for the law. He said that aggression and provocation would drive the non-fully committed protesters, leaving the committed to be dealt with by natives or police. He said that we made a mistake at Big Twin Lake when we didn't fight the protesters. If we put a bunch of them in the hospital, it would have been a forceful and decisive message to anti-Mr. whites. That was only disagreement between tribes. The state was able to reach an agreement with Mole Lake, where the tribe released their rights for about $10 million. Tribe members now only catch 100 walleye off reservation and not sell them, with more restrictions. This infuriated natives, who believed that we shouldn't give up our rights. In the spring of 1989, the Tribal Council of Flambeau continued to explore the benefits of selling these rights, when they received a petition signed by 350 locked Flambeau members, wanting to cease all negotiations to sell, lease, or rent treaty rights. They say that tribe members should have been consulted to first see how they felt. This will become known as the first successful act of the Wassagon Treaty Council, or WTA. WTA opposes negotiations and focuses on taking responsibility for preserving treaties, safe reservation harvests, extending communication between public and tribal members, educating public and tribal members about treaty rights, caring for elderly and young, and preserving a native heritage. By spring of 1989, Lac du Flambeau's internal conflict had widely deepened. Protests would also continue this year, with some numbers on lakes reaching 1,000. Conflicts would continue in the following years. Violence and landings considerably died down in 1991, when Judge Crabb made a temporary injunction against all protesters on landings. This injunction became permanent, and the Voigt decision from 1983 that stated the 1854 treaty did not allow Ojibwe to hunt and fish on territory they ceded was overturned. I remember the offense I had while living on Beaver Island. Johnny, Denny, and Kenny Kawabakis. Every day, they go out to check their nets in the 2-mile buoy before school. One day, they went out and didn't come back. A search was started with boats and planes. 2 days later, divers found the bodies of Denny and Kenny in the sunken boat. Johnny's body was found on Grape Island the next day. These boys died doing what they loved. Fishing. It's people like them that the Waller Wars fought for, and why fishing was so important. We didn't just fish to put food on the table. It was a way of life. It was a way to connect to our ancestors. It was a way to honor the lives of people like Johnny, Denny, Kenny, and Kawabakis. It's our right to fish, and it's our responsibility to keep these traditions alive. Thank you.